Hello and welcome to this little tips tutorial using Photoshop when you're a Midjourney creator. Photoshop is super useful to go the last mile with your picture or to actually completely rearrange what Midjourney gives you. So the first tip is to combine several variations by stacking them in Photoshop and picking the best of each picture based on your concept. So in this case, I'm really happy with this base picture, but there's several things I don't like. And for starters, I don't like the back of this head. It looks too much like the Aliens movie Alien, and I don't want that connotation for my concept. So I'm clicking the variation button a few times, and this will give me a lot of pictures to work with to overlay. So now I'm looking for a good back of the head image, and I like this one because it shows a kind of brain structure which perfectly emphasizes my concept of an alien giving Albert Einstein the basis for the theory of relativity. So I'm copying this, Control V, paste it into here. I don't like the rest of the image, so one way to do it now is to roughly copy this part, hit Control X, Control V and delete the rest of the layer, and then you just need to use the eraser on the new layer and sort of edit it in like this. This is the proper way to do it, I would say. You normally spend a bit more time making sure it aligns well. And another quick way to do it is just to put the preferred layer at the top and then erase parts of the image. So you can see if I just enable the top layer, the base layer, I now erased the part I didn't like and it falls through to the bottom one. As soon as you have 3-4 stacked images, this method is not as perfect anymore, because then this image, of which you only need the brain, would then cover the other stacks. And that's a great way to get the best of each image into your result image. One big issue with AI creations is that they're often creating extra fingers. You probably know this. There might be 6 fingers on a hand. There might also be like extra legs or something. Well, Photoshop can help you here. I usually use the stem tool. By the way, to resize this, I'm pressing Alt and the right mouse button, and then I move it to the right and left to increase the scope of the tool. So now I will increase the opacity to 100%, maybe the hardness to something like 40, depends on what you want to do. And I want to basically, well, first let's count the fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and maybe 7 if we include this part. So let's just hit Control Alt, hit Alt, left click, and then try to move the finger a bit up. This didn't work too well. I guess it's a start. I could now go back and try to correct this. Go back here, try to correct this. You can see this actually might take a lot of work just to get rid of the extra finger. I would probably be spending 5 more minutes here just to sort of correct it. Sometimes you can also, let's undo this. Sometimes you can also go back and use the band-aid to just sort of remove stuff or kind of make it fuzzier so it's harder to understand what's a finger. You might also want to do the smudger, and then depending on the hand you can kind of like hide the shade here. Yet another approach is to use a variation which has the perfect hand and then to kind of put that into the main image. Well, let's hope this extra fingers problem will get solved in future Midjourney versions. This tutorial uses version 4. It's currently 2023 and the problem still exists, but I figure this will become a non-issue in the future. Eyes are very important in your image because they express the character's emotion and they also express their focus and attention. So in this case, Einstein is not really looking at the alien, which I like because it gives a kind of confused, desperate stare into nothingness, into the void. He looks neither at the paper nor at the alien. It's kind of like he's looking at his inner thought of realizing that the alien, which is a very smart being, just revealed a theory to him, which is the theory of relativity. So I kind of like the stare direction, and I will not correct it. If I wanted to correct it, I would usually use the stem tool, focus really close on the eye, and then kind of do like this. Let's say move it to the left, and then pick a bit of the white, and then it kind of like makes him look a bit in a different direction. There's also a neural filter for this. If you click on neural filters and you select smart portrait, there's also where is it? Oh, eye direction thing. Let's see if that works here. Processing in the cloud. This will take a few seconds. It might not work as well as what you're doing manually, actually, especially since this is not a photo but a painted picture, but let's see. It's hit OK. I don't like what it did. I'm not sure it did anything. So we will undo that. In any case, I like this direction already. So what I don't like is that this eye is almost looking like, I don't know, a glob or an alien eye. So what I did in the result that I actually released was I basically made this a bit more eye-like, gave it a bit of white back. So I did some kind of edits like this probably, and then it looked a bit better after some work. So eyes are very important. They are a focus of your viewer, so make sure you get the details right in them. Sometimes you like a result, like maybe this one, but it's black and white. Well, you can colorize it automatically in Photoshop. So I've upscaled this one now. I'm copying it, put it back here, Control V, and now I go to Filter, Neural Filters. You may need to download them first, and there's a Colorize item, and I will enable it and hit OK. Or if I want to choose a different colorization method, in this case there would probably be a lot of work still needed to, I guess, remove the red in the paper and maybe the background, and maybe we want the alien to be green or whatever, but it's a good start, and at least you don't have to throw away a perfect black and white image. Of course, you can also try and add the words color photo or color to the prompt to avoid the black and white in the first place, but this is kind of a last resort if you're really happy with the base image that Midjourney made. In this picture I didn't have much to paint over, but let's say I wanted to put a little logo on the cup here. You just hit Ctrl-Shift-N, create a new layer. Let's call this Cup Over Paint. And then I usually pick a color from the scene. I hit Alt. When I'm using the brush tool, I hit Alt and I pick a color. This will give me a more integrated color. Maybe I pick this one. Then I adjust the size of the brush, the hardness. You want to match the painting style of the environment, and if it's too soft, it will look out of place. Let's make it very soft as an example. So if I do this now, it will look way too soft for the environment, I think. So I want to make sure I have the right hardness. let's say I have a heart here, I don't know. So this is my first try. I don't know. Maybe like this. You probably drew this in school at one point. And this would probably be too big and not properly warped, so you want to really work on it to make it look integrated. Maybe I switch up the colors a bit. Maybe I use the brightening or darkening tools. To kind of simulate the color scheme on the class to make it look more integrated. I can actually also use the warp tool now. You go to transform warp, then you can kind of like simulate the three-dimensional shape of the cup to make it a bit more realistic. And then maybe take the eraser again, maybe to thin it out a bit. If it's specifically meant to be paint, you can also include these nice little drips and drops here. So again, this is not an image I wanted on my cup because it doesn't emphasize the joke here. One thing I actually considered for this painting was to have it spell EMC square, but I thought it was too much for this image. And I also usually don't like text in visuals because they kind of tap into another area of the viewer's brain and kind of take them out of the self-realizations that I want to include in the image. So I kind of just added the caption. In this image, the caption was quote, unquote, and then you just use a name like theory of relativity or something, and that was meant to be the alien speaking to Einstein. That was a joke. So the text is in the caption. I didn't want it to be on the paper, but sometimes you can just include text in your image like that. Now for this tip, I want to emphasize my concept with the image and remove clutter. For instance, I don't know what this thing on the table is, but it distracts from the main joke of the image, which should be Albert Einstein in his office, and I don't know what this is. It looks almost like a miniature toy soldier or something. So I just select the Band-Aid, the spot healing brush tool. I go over this and it removes it. In this case it works rather well. In other cases you need to spend a lot more time making sure the thing is gone. Sometimes I use the stem tool, decrease the opacity, make sure it's very soft, and then kind of pick something. For example, this is a bit dark now, maybe pick something here, kind of paint over it a bit. Now it's become a bit brighter here, which probably looks better. Now I want to show you how you can change the face expression. So I've entered the prompt street photography woman blue hour. Blue hour means the hour after sunset, or the time after sunset. It's not always an hour, which creates kind of nightly blue colors which bring out orange lights especially well. Golden hours, another thing you can play around with. Actually, terms from photography like wide angle or bokeh can become very useful tools in your prompting. So I'm using this photo because changing the facial expression uses a neural filter that works good on photographic elements but less good on paintings. So you go to neural filters, you go to smart portrait, and then let's say I want her to smile. I increase the happiness slider, and you can see this is processed in the Adobe Cloud. And this will take some seconds, and then hopefully she will come back smiling a bit more than the base image. You can see it's not perfect. Actually, the teeth and kind of the whole expression looks pretty weird. Sometimes it works a bit better. I also had times in the past where I then adjusted the teeth manually a bit. I don't like this smile at all, so I would actually not use it, but it's an interesting slider to kind of play around with. Note you can also change the facial age, the hair thickness, eye direction. There's also something for light direction. Let's give it a try with facial age. Can we make her older? I'm not too happy with this actually. Sometimes it works. You can experiment. Sometimes you also want to add a completely new element into your picture. Let's say we want to give Mr. Einstein a hat, something we don't actually need for this joke picture, but let's say we did. So you go to your Discord, and one thing you can do is you hit the variations button. This is the base image that we choose. And when you're in remix mode, you can add a word. I noticed the less I add, the more chance it looks at least remotely similar to the source image. To actually have the remix prompt pop up, you need to go into your settings and you need to click remix mode here. Okay. When you have that in green, then you can remix things. And in this case, these are the 4 generations we received. You can see the picture is wildly changed in style and colors, so it's kind of not too useful a lot of the times, but sometimes if you try enough, you get something that looks a bit like what you need. And in this case, we upscaled it and we receive this image. We copy it. Actually, it's kind of looking fun altogether. We paste it back into here. I could now try the AI auto select tool, which kind of understands the concept of objects in the image. I click on the head, this will select it. Now I can hit Ctrl-Shift-I to invert the selection and hit delete. So now we kind of got a head here. We would probably then spend some time integrating it using the eraser, for example, to soften certain edges. Then we would go to the layer below, in this case to, I guess, remove some hair or try to. This might actually take some minutes or more. And we probably also want to make sure the light direction is proper in the new element. So in this case, actually, I would prefer the shadow to be more here and the light to be more here. So you want to spend a lot of time to find the right base object. And a totally different approach is to create a fully new object. In this case, I simply use the prompt head. And let's say I were to like a head from here. I would then upscale it, or actually, oftentimes when you just need to integrate something, just the preview is sufficient. So I hit copy image, go back here, maybe again use the auto selector. Now I hit Ctrl-X, delete this, and now we have a different head. I hit Ctrl-T to resize it and maybe to kind of rotate it like this. I might also want to flip it around. Actually, the light source was better in this case. Oh well, let's put the head on like this. And let's make it a bit too small. And in this case, to have it be integrated better, you want to adjust kind of like the paint stroke thickness or the base blur in your element to align with the thing that's below. In this case, I would probably go like blur, Gaussian blur, give it a bit of softness like this. And to integrate the color scheme better, sometimes what I do is I just actually either completely desaturate this first and then paint over with colors. Desaturation works like this. And then I would hit Ctrl-Shift-N to create a new color head overlay. I could now choose the color to overpaint, I pick a color that I like from the base image, maybe this green. Increase the brush size. And now you can see I'm painting over the base head. See? And this will less affect the overall color balance of the base image, which is usually pretty great coming from Midjourney, especially if you already picked the image you like best. And then maybe I will also increase the brightness of some parts to better reflect the light source here. And then last not least, probably you want to go to the base layer or create a new layer and kind of add a bit of shadow back, because the head would throw a shadow. You can spend a lot of time trying to make it look perfect. See how it's now a bit green here in the shadow, so I would now go back to the eraser, erase the green here, and so on and so forth. So it would take a lot of time to look integrated, but that's the base concept. Sometimes you want to change the color scheme of your creation, like the hue or the brightness or the color curve. Oftentimes the one you pick from the many variations that Midjourney gives you is already perfect, because that's why you picked it. In other times you might find it perfect in its base composition, but you don't like the colors. You can then go to Image, Adjustments, and you have a variety of things to choose from. Here I want to go to Color Balance, and you have the midtones selected by default, and then I love cyan colors. I slide it a bit to the cyan side. I like the kind of cold, fresh look it gives. And then I basically change it from green more towards blue cyan tones. And then one thing I also did is to go to the curve. And you might have seen this histogram. This basically is the color curve showing the distribution or the amount of dark and bright colors in your image. So the further to the right you go, the more you can adjust the bright, and these are the darker colors. So let's say I wanted to get rid of the very darks in the image. I could just pick this little dot here and move it up. In this case it would kind of be washed out, which is something I don't want. But if you click into the curve and then slide it around, you can see you can selectively increase certain parts of your curve, which often gives nice results. In this case I actually did something like that. And the final image, I also removed some mountains here, I removed some parts here, I changed the hat and so on and so forth, gave the person longer hair, and then I ended up with this image. Actually, I don't think that was the final image. I think I also removed these and stuff like that. But in any case, I was happy with the color scheme for this one, and that became the result. You can also go completely crazy and create a huge amount of individual Midjourney images and then edit them together like a collage. In this case, I wanted to recreate an alternate history Beatles album cover and have them all be country western musicians. So I have a different background and I have a different prompt and image for each of the members. Like this is just Paul McCartney, so this gives better results. If I were to mix all 4 Beatles into the same prompt, it would probably not be as good. In 2023, I suppose Midjourney will get better over time. And then I basically put them together and use the smart selection to select it. And then I edit it together into something like this. You can see there's a lot of layers here individually and a lot of retouching and editing to get like a wholesome one. In this case, I also converted all the individual people's colors into black and white and then recolorized them just to give a more integrated look. I adjusted basically the light angle, everything made sure we have a left-handed Paul McCartney instead of a right-handed one because he was left-handed, and so on and so forth. And then you get a fitting result. So I hope these tips were useful. Photoshop is a super great tool to go the last mile, or to actually create a completely composite image of many variations you create. And I hope to see your images using this. And if this was useful, please share it. And I will see you in the next tutorial video. Thanks and bye-bye.